So the topic of ray tracing officially has came back up, and I'm tired of it, and I want to talk about it. I'm going to give you a little bit of an Addict rant on ray tracing and how I feel about this feature. Let's get on with it. What's going on, you guys? Gaming out here coming at you for another video. Look, let's talk about ray tracing for a little bit. For those of you know, ray tracing makes things look a little nice, makes it look, real shiny, real eye catchy, man. Give you a little bit of that eye candy. And there's been a lot of speculation on this. For the most part, I'm sick and tired of hearing about ray tracing. I get it. It does make the game look better, but I preferably think we need to be focusing on other stuff besides ray tracing. But while I'm looking through all of this stuff that's going on with Forza Motorsports, for those of you that aren't really up to date on here, pretty much what happened is it seems like Microsoft may have been a little bit misleading when it come to what this Forza showcase was and the gameplay they shown, whether or not it was PC or Xbox. I'm gonna briefly talk about that. I don't really care about these type of features, but what I will say is there's a good chance that was on an Xbox or a PC, most likely PC. I don't know exactly what it was on, but look, at the end of the day, regardless what that machine was on and what that app was on, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Always have speculation when it comes to what these things are being shown on. We have seen from stuff like Ubisoft showing us Watch Dogs. Take everything you see with a grain of salt till you actually get your hands on the actual game. Regardless that there's ray tracing in Forza Motorsports is irrelevant at this point. Wait for that game to come out before you assume it is or is not in the game. But as I'm looking through the internets about this ray tracing, and keep in mind this is brought up all the time, I feel like Twitter does nothing but argue if a game is going to be ray traced, especially these racing games. I guess it matters to a lot of demographics if ray tracing's in these games, and I'm looking at all this and I'm just like, what are we even talking about at this point? You're driving mad fast in these games anyway. Does it really matter what some of the surfaces are gonna look like and stuff? I get it. People like realism, and I do feel like ray tracing does help with that immersionness, but it's just I'm so sick and tired of people arguing about this. Why don't people argue whether or not we deserve more features in games? I have been 100% always on this hill, and I'm willing to die on this hill, that we need more engines like the Nemesis system. We need more diversity in terms of gameplay mechanics. Why are we always talking about how a game looks? I get it. I'm willing to come out there with you guys and say a game looking very eye candy-ish, and I'm not dumb. I'm not an idiot. I know that when it comes to showing off these games and these showcases, you're going to want to make sure they look pretty. Eye candy sells better than anything else in the industry. I'm not saying that we don't capitalize on how a game looks like. I'm not saying that we don't look into trying to do this. I feel like the industry knows this. And the worst part about it is they are capitalizing on the fact that people like pretty stuff. And I'm not saying that we don't do that, but I do feel like the industry needs to be better on how a game feels and plays as well as how the game looks. I have felt like the entire Xbox One generation, that's all people really gravitate towards. How many resolutions you can have on the screen. Is it ray tracing involved? Is it this? The power of the cloud? And everything always pointed towards graphics of the game, the textures of the game. And I felt like we didn't have a lot of innovation when it comes to gameplay. I do think there are certain things that was done last generation, like the Nemesis engine. I've been a very big spoken person about the Nemesis engine, but I feel like we haven't had a lot of stuff like that. I do feel the indie scene has done a lot more in terms of gameplay than the AAA market, and usually they adapt whatever the indies do in the next couple years, and they pretty much mainstreams what those ideals were. They make it better, and the cycle continues over and over again. And I've always felt like usually it was a middle ground, but for some reason I do think that the Xbox One generation, they really went extra with how a game looks rather than how the game feels. And I think that we need to get back to having more experimental games on gameplay. And I'm not saying that no AAA developer is doing this. I just don't see a huge push for it. I feel like people care more about what a game looks like than how it plays. And I feel like that's an issue. And I don't feel like that's, you know, a Microsoft issue or a PlayStation issue or anyone for that matter. I think it's an industry issue. You see the media picking up on that stuff. You see people going out and making vertical slices for their games because they know that people care more about what that game looks like than it feels. Like I said, look at the Ubisoft scenario. It is famous for giving you vertical slices of gameplay that you're never going to see the game look like that. We have seen it with countless studios having a downplay and a downgrade in the graphics department when the actual game comes out because they were selling you a dream. And I feel like I want to get to a point where they're selling us on gameplay mechanics. I want to get to a point where we see AI evolve. I want to get there. But until everyone stops reacting this way with like the Forza Motorsports thing, like I just mentioned earlier, talking about ray tracing, and then you saw the Gran Turismo thing last year talking about ray tracing. That's why I feel like this is an issue, and I feel like it's never going to get fixed because people like to fanboy over consoles on Twitter, and then people in these studios like to accommodate to those people because they know they're going to share their stuff, and it's not necessarily for them, it's for the casual audience too. Like I said, people are going to gravitate something that looks better than something that plays better, because you can't really demonstrate how a game plays to 100% that you can how a game looks. And I feel like let's do a middle ground, man. Let's have games look better and play better. Let's get some new type of features going on. I think there's enough room for innovation in general everywhere in the gaming industry. That's pretty much my rant about this. Like, look, I get it. People love ray tracing. I'm not saying don't get rid of ray tracing or anything like that. Keep ray tracing, keep evolving ray tracing, make it make less demanding, and then, you know, we finally start to see it incorporated in every game. I know there's a lot of features that go into ray tracing to even make it less demanding, but I do feel like we need to have that same energy for gameplay as well. And that's not just the consumers, that's the developers. Stop giving us stuff that we're not going to see when the game comes out, because you are literally setting yourself up to fail by showing these games in a graphical standpoint that you're not going to give your consumers when the game comes out. The media, stop clickbaiting the shit out of this stuff. When it happens, go ahead and make an article or two talking about this area because it is going up, but stop clickbaiting it every day. And I think a lot of media outsources, they do that.